Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us. I'm Laura McLoughlin. I'm one of the regional sales managers. And with me today, we have Jared Richards, who's head of our practice for digital workplace and network services. We're here to talk to you today about how to retire your legacy telephone on your terms without risk or disruption. So, Jared, I think a question that is on everybody's mind at the minute is should we migrate now?
I mean, realistically, the way the market has gone in the last couple of years since Openreach announced the PSTN switch off, where the old copper network was being decommissioned for voice services, it's something that customers should have done, in the last few years. Leaving it to this point is kind of leaving it till that tipping point where there's going to be a lot of demand for people who've put it off and put it off. And then the resource available to support that is going to be more finite, making it more difficult to actually get things done in time. So we've listed a few things here are reasons why customers should consider migrating now. The big one, as I just mentioned there, is the PSTN switch off. That is scheduled to complete January 2027. So we're in the final 12 months leading up to that now. But some of the other reasons why we've listed why it's a good idea to consider this now or prior to now, support and maintenance costs are rising annually, largely down to the fact that the skilled engineers on these on-premise systems and the manufacturers themselves are exiting the markets. Engineers have identified that there is that drive to cloud, have reskilled in cloud products and have moved into those areas. The engineering skills are fewer now. There's a lot of, as I mentioned then, a lot of manufacturers who have moved out of the market completely. There are still a lot of their hardware out there, and that finite resource that's available to support it is very difficult to obtain. Hardware that's reaching end of life as we move into this more digital age, the legacy on-premise equipment, so the little box of lights that sits in the comms room and handles all your phones is becoming end of life for a lot of manufacturers, even the ones that still exist in the marketplace. So it's very difficult to actually continue that solution as we move into that more digital age. The vendors themselves are identifying that. So in addition to the hardware reaching end of life, the vendors are reducing the support options and saying, "Hey, it's end of life. We're not going to support you on it," which means that in some cases, and I've seen this in my 20-year career in this industry, that some customers, suppliers are actively on eBay looking for parts in order to be able to keep a legacy system alive rather than having that conversation about moving into the cloud. And of course, the elephant in the room that appears to be in every single product these days is AI. And in the cloud world, particularly for telephony and definitely for contact center, AI is a massive piece where it enables your users to reduce the amount of time they're taking on mundane tasks. That frees them up to be spending more time with customers or with colleagues, and really gives them that advantage then in terms of how they manage that. So sure, there's lots of reasons to do it from a technical aspect, but there's also a lot of reasons from a advancement facility and an advancement point of view where you can actually improve what your business is doing and how your business is operating within this in this space.
So setting aside the AI advantage, what have we seen in our business out of them kind of 5 that are left that customers are really digging in on? Is it the vendor reducing support options? Are we seeing a lot of customers come through worried about that?
There is a number of it. When we have situations with on-premise equipment, the process of support is a lot more complicated than with a cloud solution. So customer comes into the office in the morning, doesn't notice immediately, but the phones aren't ringing, realizes after 15, 20 minutes maybe, well, actually there's no calls coming in, something's not right, picks up the phone, tries to make a call, phone system's down. Called contacts the supplier, which would be, us or another maintenance provider, says, "We've got an issue, our phones aren't working." The next step is to do triage from our side or from the supplier side. So identify what system it is, whether the telephone lines themselves are at fault or whether it's the PBX. That's a bit of triage that can take a few hours. If we identify it's not the lines, it looks like it's the PBX, it's about sending an engineer to site. Depending on the skills of the telephone system the client uses and the location, that could be several hours before an engineer could get to site. The engineer will get there, assess it, In much older systems where they're more card based, if they identify that there's an extension card, a line card, a processor card which has failed, that then requires that engineer to then order a spare part. If it is one of these legacy systems which are end of life and not supported by the vendors anymore, then it is a case of going to the second hand market to try and obtain that part. And that could be any amount of time. So all of a sudden, something which was very quick to fix several years ago could actually now be, anything from a few days to a few weeks before that issue's resolved. And there are measures that can be put in place, like call forward to mobiles, but to run a business over that sort of indeterminate period of time is quite difficult. So we have had a few customers who've done it as a result of a hardware failure that isn't able to move very quickly. We have had customers who've identified that time it takes to actually get an engineer to site and get that issue resolved, that pain that causes costs their business far more than what it would be to move to the cloud. So I think all of these are very key reasons for why a customer should migrate. And I guess the key is for the customer to make that move before it's too late.
Hmm. Yeah. I think a question that's on, pretty much a lot of people's lips is the PSTN switch off going to be moved or extended again?
Yeah, I mean, it was 2025. Yeah, there was a lot of hesitation. We all wondered whether OpenReach would be able to maintain that date. They did push it back to January 2027. We have it on absolute authority from OpenReach that it will not be moved again. They have released guidance now that at 3 points throughout the course of this year, they will be increasing the cost of those legacy PSDN services, including legacy broadband that comes in over copper, in order to drive customers to do that more. So by, I believe the last date is August this year, or maybe October, but at some point during the second half of this year, the cost of these services will be 100% more than they were at the start of the year. So as that clock ticks further and further over, customers are going to see an increased cost. I believe that initiative that has been released by OpenReach to drive up those costs to motivate customers to migrate is a signal that that end date is absolutely going to be firm. That is going to be the sort of the last cusp of it. If it gets to that date and a customer still hasn't migrated, I'm not sure what the outcome for that customer is going to be. Could mean loss of service. Definitely means some form of disruption. So yeah, now is absolutely the time to strike.
Hmm. Yeah, it absolutely sounds so as well. So I'm going to move on to the next question, which is real world migration stories.
Yeah, so when we talk to customers, there are several different points where customers approach this from. So there may be customers who have multiple sites, perhaps grown through acquisition, and they have different telephony solutions in place. So they're maybe being more proactive to say, right, we need a more joined up approach to our business now. And when we go and have those conversations, the cloud is the natural solution that a customer would migrate to, because it means that there is no dependence on any one of those locations. In the olden days, which makes me sound really old, but in the old world of on-prem PBX, there may be one location that has a single PBX where all the other sites are sort of slaves off that. But then if that site goes down, all of the sites go down. Moving forward in the new world, we don't tend to have that challenge now, because it's hosted centrally in a high resilient data center. Customers who have complex call routing, where they maybe have, again, I'll use that multi-site example. Perhaps they have a customer service team that's distributed across multiple locations, and they need those calls to actually be routed between locations, between users, or ringing all those users at the same time. That's another starting point where customers will stop and think, is there a better way for us to be able to do this? Is there a better experience we can provide to our customers? We talk about legacy integration. So CTI, computer telephony integration, has been around for a long time. That's where you would have things like a click to dial from your CRM system or from Outlook, or screen popping. So Lauren, you call in and your details pop up on screen for me so I can see who you are straight away. That's a feature that's been around for a long time, and it used to be integrating with on-prem software, but now software is also moving to the cloud. There needs to be other ways to do that, and those legacy solutions, they don't tend to have that API based access to support those sort of integrations. So it's another point where customers will pretty much start from. And I mentioned about the customer experience, the user experience, so giving them that sort of single joined up approach. Our business is split across multiple locations. You and I particularly, work across different offices at different times. And if we walk into our London office, our Cheltenham office, our Wakefield office, the experience we get is exactly the same.
Mm.
So you don't have to go in and learn how you need to do something. We can pull up at any desk. We can have exactly the same experience at that desk that we would have in our native office. And then finally, is around that. Oh, it still works. Yes, Kate, does still work. It is still in that cupboard ticking on. But depending on what solution it is, how old it is probably hanging on for dear life at that point. So it's something to look at before it becomes a problem. And there is all the old adage that people often hit me with, which is if it ain't broke, don't fix it. But by the time it's broke, it's too late to fix it, and particularly with some of these older vendors. So getting in there before it gets to that end of life is absolutely critical to making sure that there is no disruption to the business once that sort of gets to that sort of critical point.
And what are the common blockers that we're probably seeing? Let's talk a bit about the common blockers just there.
Yeah, I mean, we've given a few examples here. There is the sort of elephant in the room around the budget, particularly if you've purchased your PBX that sits in the cupboard with the flashing lights and your handsets on the desks. That's an asset that you acquired at whatever point in time, and you depreciate that over the course of its lifespan. The longer you can keep it in, the more you depreciate it and the less it owes you. Moving from that to a cloud-based solution, which is going to be absolutely subscription based, so cost per user per month, it can be a bit of a difficult one for customers to adjust to. Um, excuse me, particularly if they've got a set budget for comms, which might be what they pay for maintenance, what they pay for trunks going into that PBX, and then call charges on top. To then have subscription basis per user and then license costs for different features, it can be difficult. But what we're seeing more and more now is that parity, and particularly with what's coming up with the OpenReach switch off, where costs are going to increase this year for customers. That's absolutely 100% going to happen. By at a point later in the second half of the year, costs will be double what they are today. That's going to get to a point where perhaps moving to the cloud isn't as much of a jump as it would have been previously. We've also listed fear of downtime. So, a lot of customers have business critical. Their phones are business critical. If you've got a customer service team, perhaps you're a distribution company where you need to be speaking to your drivers and customers, all the time. That time it takes to move from on-prem to the cloud is always a concern. That has been going back, a few years, probably about 10 years. It absolutely was a challenge when it come to moving that actual go live date. But we've actually got to a point now where, and again, driven by that PSTN switch off, where that process is so much more streamlined now. Everything's built on the new cloud system side by side with what you've got today. If you go down the route of soft phone, we're installing an application on the desktop, so or mobile, so there's no need to have new hardware installed on site. That gives your users the time to become familiar with it, adjust to it, and understand how it works. And once they've had that sort of bedding in period, we then flip the switch to move the numbers. And officially, we will talk about the numbers porting. We've listed that as a blocker here as well. We talk about the number porting being sort of up to 4 hours. In most cases, it's done within 20 minutes. We now initiate that time of that number port. So if the number port is designed or is preferred to go through between 12 and 2, perhaps a lunchtime period where it might be a bit quieter, we can flick the switch at 12 o'clock. The numbers get released by the previous provider, and then they come into our network at that sort of as soon as possible. And because they're pre-programmed, they will automatically start routing to the groups or the individuals that they've been pre-programmed to. So the number porting process is absolutely a lot smoother now, and minimizes that sort of downtime window. Limited in-house experience. Now, traditionally on a phone system, you would need to be an engineer to work on it. You would absolutely need to have done vendor courses, understand the language, understand the shortcut keys that you would have to type to be able to get it to do things. In the cloud world, everything's sort of click and save. So, you've got a web portal. That web portal can be accessed from anywhere. It's exactly the same web portal we would use to build it, that we give to the customers to maintain it in life. And you will have that ability to upskill. So we can provide either online classroom-based training for customers so that they can have super users and administrators within their organization. And of course, because some of these platforms that we talk about that we work with are global platforms, there is a lot of content online. I always say the University of YouTube is absolutely the place to start when you need to learn how to do something quickly. And in a lot of cases, if you think, oh, how do I create this hunt group? How do I change the time on our schedule? There will be content on YouTube for it. But plus, these vendors also have their own online universities where customers can sort of go and pick up those skills in house on an ad hoc basis. And with the advent of AI, now a lot of it will actually guide you through it. So you could go into the help pages on the portal, type in, I want to create a hunt group, and it will guide you step by step how to create that hunt group. So you are a lot more self-sufficient, which of course means that you can react a lot faster. If you it doesn't happen much, not where I live anyway, but probably up where you are, Lauren, in the north. If you have a situation where there is significant snow and for some reason the office is unobtainable because of the weather, somebody could log into that web portal at home, either change the message to advise of the weather that there may be a delay in answering the call. Users can access that soft phone client from home, so it could potentially still work from home, but it enables you to be a lot more reactive. Whereas again, I'm going to say the term again, the olden days where I came from, you would have to raise a ticket to your provider. Of course, you're not the only person impacted by that weather condition. So there's lots of tickets going into your provider, and then you'll have to wait a period of time. And it's so much more streamlined going into that. So I guess ending on that final section, what does success look like? It's a standardized platform across all of your organization, all of your users, centralized control that isn't dependent on any one of your customer locations. So cloud-based, fully resilient. Most of the platforms we operate within, in fact, all of the platforms we operate in are 5 nines. So 99.999% uptime. They're always being upgraded. They're always having new features come in, and they come into the customers as they are. Whereas a traditional system, if you wanted to add on a call recorder, call logging, if you wanted to add on an auto attendant, it may be another card, it may be another license. It's going to be time, it's going to be money. In these cloud platforms, it's there. They're able to adopt that very quickly and very easily. Simpler management, as I said, web-based portal, go on there, manage that solution in-house. We will absolutely support you if you need that level of support. If you don't have that skills available, perhaps the primary person who looks after the system is on holiday or perhaps off sick and you need some support. So having that capability to manage that in-house and with our support is absolutely going to be key.
Thanks for explaining all that, Jared. I think the burning question for a lot of customers and what we find is how do they prepare for the migration?
Yeah, absolutely. And this is where, us and in fairness to the industry, a lot of our industry peers would step in and support as well. One thing to really focus on not to do is to just assume what you've got today is what you need in the new world. Particularly if you've had your system in place for, an extended period of time, you will find that there will be configuration, hunt groups, users. There'll be a lot of stuff that's configured in there which you probably won't need. It's always good to have a look under the hood of what you've got today so we can see what it looks like, but it's always best for you to sort of validate that. So understanding what's there now and then what you need moving forward is absolutely going to be critical to making sure we deliver the right solution. There may be challenges with the way your system works at the moment. So doing a sort of control C, control V, copy paste scenario isn't always the right way to do it. Plus, most systems are completely incompatible with each other. I couldn't just take a config from, I'm going to pick a VIA as an example, and a VIA PBX and just dump it into some cloud system because they generally talk different languages. So in order to do that, you are potentially going to add cost by needing a skilled, again, picking on a VIA and a VIA engineer to do that sort of initial discovery of what that system's built like, and then the new cloud platform engineer to do that transpose and build into there. So it's not always a lift and shift. Sometimes it can be, but it generally isn't. And although we are talking about telephony and it is a cloud telephone system, it's not quite like a hosted PBX. Some telephone systems, you can sort of lift and shift and put them in a data center and host them centrally. It gives you that centralization, but it misses some things like resilience as part of that. Whereas cloud telephony is more of a service. That tin, that infrastructure, it's completely not your problem as the customer. Your concern is the endpoint and what's happening for the users. So these are the sort of things we'd suggest to avoid when you're going through that migration process. And then what to do instead. So it's really about starting with what it's actually going to do for you. So I've been around 20 years. I've been a fly on the wall in a lot of meetings where I've supported somebody as a specialist. And salespeople love to talk about features, love to talk about auto attendant that pre-sales people do as well. Love to talk about how to build a queue, how to build a hunt group. Well, that's not really what's going to benefit the business. It's great that it has this stuff, but what does it actually mean? So working towards the outcomes, what does this actually mean for you? If you've got a telephone system on site, you're a 24/7 business, perhaps you deal with blue light services and you need to be able to be available and respond 24/7, 365. Having a single bit of tin in your building with no resilience on it is not going to enable you to do that. So we establish that your outcome is requiring a high level of uptime, excuse me, and we lean into a solution which enables that from the cloud. Cleaning up before you move, as I mentioned, so not taking like for like. Let's understand what you've got. Let's see what you actually need in the new world, and let's build it to that specification. And that's a very consultative process. So we'll understand with you. We do workshops, we do design and discovery workshops and sessions to understand where you are today, where you need to get to, what is and what isn't possible, and then we work together to build that. And then, you need to also accept that modern platforms, they do work differently, but they also work better. So they offer that level of resilience out of the box. They remove that single point of failure from your solution. They have lots of features. I used to talk to customers about an on-prem PBX maybe I'm showing my age now, 15, 16 years ago. And, we were talking about 500 features out of the box. It's got dynamic extension. It's got auto attend, all this wonderful stuff. That's all there in the cloud, but it's all there natively. I'm talking to you about how great it was. And then you're adding additional stuff on. You're adding on call recording. That's a server we need to put on. You're adding on call reporting. That's another server we need to put on. All this stuff is there. So it all sits within that one ecosystem as well. So rather than having 5, 6, 7 different logins for different applications or portals to gain this information, it's all there. And then finally, it's around the planning. So it's not just a case of, okay, you've bought the cloud, we've got your config, here you go, enjoy. It's about that full planning. So looking at your internet connection, your internal network, your firewall, let's make sure that the settings you've got are suitable for what we're delivering. Are there ports that we need opening on your firewall for the voice traffic? Is there LAN configuration that's needed to ensure that voice is prioritized over data traffic? Do we need to train your users? Do we need to do workshops with your users before we go live to get their input? Let's spend some time talking to the people who actually use these things day to day and find out what their challenges are, what their biggest headaches are, what slows them down in their day-to-day job. And let's build the solution that really meets that. And then finally, testing and proof of concept. So I mentioned previously around the number porting. So we build the system now with dummy numbers. That allows the customer to have a period of testing, user acceptance testing, we call that, which allows you to then test making calls, test the hunt groups, test everything before we actually push the button to go live and move you off your legacy PBX. So this is a standard process that we follow here at CloudClevr, and we would absolutely be able to support a customer to not just migrate to the cloud, but do the full planning and the due diligence beforehand to ensure A, the right platform is going in, and B, the right process is being followed to deliver that.
Yeah, 100%. And we've definitely seen that in the customers that we've seen. The testing and proof of concept has been amazing. This sort of stuff keeps your IT managers up or your business owners up. But when we've gone in there and we've took that approach and gone, listen, we're going to go and test all this and show you the proof of concept, it's almost like a massive weight lifted off their shoulders.
I think that's a testament to what we do here at CloudClevr. I mean, we've been here, a relatively short period of time, and from compared to where we've been before, the amount of case studies that are pushed through the marketing team from
Hmm.
satisfied customers who have gone, wow, we feel that we feel like we're CloudClev's number one customer. We feel like the process was so smooth when we were so worried about it. And, here we are now with this brilliant solution. And I think that's a testament to the people at CloudClevr in terms of how we actually approach that. And yeah, it's absolutely, there for everyone to see. So that methodical step by step process that we go through, it gives customers peace of mind, but it also gives the end users that sort of pleasant experience. It's very easy for somebody to have their nose put out when we've delivered something and it didn't have something that they had before. I remember years ago we had a scenario where we moved from an older version of a soft phone client to a new version of the soft phone client, and the new version didn't have emojis in it. And the kickback we had from that, it was huge. But had we have done that sort of, and it wasn't here, it was a previous role, but had we have done that sort of due diligence and that surveying of the end user base and those workshops, we could have discovered that that was pretty
Mm.
critical to those users. But we could have bit that off in the beginning and, alerted the leadership team at that customer that, look, your end users say they use these a lot. They're not
Mhm.
really business critical, but they're not going to be there in the new version. Whereas it actually turned into quite a negative experience, where they didn't have something they expected, and they started to view the whole solution as something negative, which it wasn't.
Mhm. Yeah, absolutely. That's why it's key to take that consultative approach um, with this. So thank you, Jared. We'll move on to the next slide, and it's all about CloudClevr UCaaS migration framework. Can you just talk us a bit through it?
I mean, this is very similar to what we've just sort of talked through around what to do and what not to do. So this is absolutely the process we deliver, and we stick to rigidly on every single deployment, whether you are one user, whether you are 10,000 users. This is the deployment process that we go through. So first, understanding your current environment, what you've got, how it's configured, the people that use it, how they use it, what's important to them, what challenges they've got. We then move into the second stage where we define what that future state is. So what are the requirements? What's important to the business? What's business critical? What's nice to have? What's desirable? Let's do a full Moscow analysis and actually categorize that with the customer. And then we'll be able to decide which solution is going to be the right solution for those requirements. We present that back as a solution. Customer accepts it. We move into projects where the projects team will then onboard that solution via a dedicated project coordinator or project manager, depending on the size and complexity of that solution. We'll do a readiness assessment. So we'll look at the customer's infrastructure. We'll make sure that they're ready to adopt the new platform. We'll do that initial rollout and enable them to do some testing. Move into that build and pilot, which sort of is attached to that, where we'll do that build to that customer spec with dummy numbers, hand it over to either a group of users to do that initial testing, or perhaps users in different departments to ensure that they're comfortable with it and the call routing is happening the way they want it to. Any IVRs or auto attendants are set up as required. And then we can start to do that phased migration. So depending on the current state, what PBX you've got and the telephone lines you've got, you can do sort of a phased migration. So you might do one department first. They could be that pilot before we then roll it out to everybody else. Or you might do a big bang and move everybody all at the same time. But the key is that consultation process with the engineer, with the project manager, to understand the way the customer wants that process to go. And then training, change management, and adoption. So training for specific users in specific roles. If you've got a contact center, then we need to provide agent training to those individuals. We also need to provide supervisor training to the people who are managing those teams. Administration training, so whether that's just for a UC solution, an old cloud PBX, if you will, whether they need to have admin training for that, or whether there's a contact center and we need to do contact center admin training. We like to do trainer type scenarios, so ask for super users within the organization who can be there to support your users as they go through. So your internal champions will absolutely give them sort of enhanced training so that they can then roll that out further within your organization. And then there's that ongoing support. So it absolutely is not a fit and forget scenario. So we don't just install it and wave you goodbye and we'll come back in 4 years' time as we're approaching the contract renewal. We will absolutely be with you throughout. For our account management team, who will have regular meetings with you to talk to you about how things are going, talk to you about the latest innovations and what's coming up, and how we can develop that platform further. And also from our support desk. So
Mm.
all of our customers take a sort of a management service of that. So if you do need any ad hoc move ads or changes, then that would absolutely be part of that solution, subject to additional licenses if required. But we would cover that as part of that ongoing management via our UK service desk. This is the delivery framework we absolutely work to, as I said at the beginning, from any size of customer, whether it's a single user working from home or whether it's a multinational organization with 10,000 people distributed across the globe. And we would absolutely use this exact framework, but tailor it to your specific requirements.
Mhm. And I love this one, these 5 steps, the planning, the deployment, and then the constant reviewing as well. It's always a breath of fresh air when we get feedback from our customers as well on how well we actually do this.
How streamlined it is.
Mm,
I've come from places where a deployment could take 6 months, and it really didn't need to, but it was never sort of mapped out what the steps would be. It was almost like every time it would
mm,
be done for the first time. So having something which is clear, defined, repeatable. I don't like the phrase, but I will use it. That sort of cookie cutter model, it makes us get better at it every time we do it. And it gives customers that confidence that they're in good hands.
yeah, absolutely agree. Thank you for explaining and talking us through that, Jared.
Sure. So yeah, thanks everybody for joining us today. This has been a very quick whistle stop tour about cloud telephony, what to do, what not to do, the steps you should take, the things you should consider. We are here absolutely to support all of our customers and organizations that aren't currently with us right now. We're more than happy to provide a free telephony assessment to audit where you are today. Not just a case of looking at the 10 you've got on site, but you may already be in the cloud, but the product might not be fit for what you need. And we can absolutely support you with that. We can map your requirements against different UCaaS platforms. We are absolutely vendor agnostic. So we work with the best in breed that are out there. So it's not just a case of, yeah, we'll listen to you, everything you want, but we've only actually got one product to bring to the market. We have lots of products behind us, which we'll find a solution which works for the customer. And we'll identify which option works best, whether it is moving to a full cloud solution or whether there's that middle ground where there might be some hybrid. Perhaps you've got some legacy analog extensions in hospitality, for example, where you need to maintain some kit on site. And, we can absolutely work with you to do that. So, yeah, thank you very much for joining us today. Please feel free to scan the QR code to book a session with us. One of our account managers, one of our service specialists will be able to actually discuss with you around how you can transform your communications. And yeah, we hope to see you soon.
Thanks, guys.